We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Now, that's a famous quote by Aristotle, which explains the value of repetition in the pursuit of winning and the discipline it takes to hold yourself to the highest standard in every moment in preparation and in life to make excellence happen is never a sacrifice. It's a privilege. Now, that's a quote by Frank Dick, an expert on winning, and he's here today for you to discuss why winning matters. Frank Dick, it is good to have you again on the Big Friday Finish. What a pleasure.
So it's really great, always great to be back with Action Coach, because I know I'm right in the middle of people that I really know and understand, coaches.
Well, you're right up there now, because I've done the Aristotle quote and I've done the Frank Dick quote side by side. You got to be proud of that one, Frank. And look, this is the tone for today's message, yeah, Frank?
Yep.
A winning culture is founded in a learning culture. And just as a bit of a warm-up, folks, because we're going to be doing stories, we're going to be getting motivation from Frank here. You're going to be honing your communication. You're going to be honing your winning mindset. And just as a warm-up, before we get into all of the stories, I've gone and grabbed a few of your quotes, Frank. Let's have a look at these. I want you to just comment on them for a second. So never walk from today's experience without putting everything in place to make tomorrow's performance even better.
Yeah, I really believe in this, because your last step into today's arena is the first step into tomorrow's. You can never leave the experience of what you're doing right now where it is. You've got to carry it through and use it for the next step in life.
Absolutely. Look, this is just the warm-up, folks. You have got an action-fueled session. Please start putting comments in the comment box as well. There are only 3 things that you must do with mistakes. 1 is acknowledgement, 2 is learn from them, and 3, don't repeat them. That way, not only you will grow through your experience, your teammates will do so as well. So where did that come from? It's because
it's too easy to hide a mistake, isn't it, James? I mean, we don't want to make them, and having made them, we sometimes just don't want other people to know about them. But first thing is, make sure everybody does know the mistake's been made. Not to make you look stupid, but to make sure that everybody else can learn. Because in getting the solution to the problems that you've been facing, it's not only you who learns, but the whole team does. So they won't make the mistake in the future.
Yeah, I suppose that takes strength, doesn't it? It takes that personal trust and trust in the team to be able to, be vulnerable and say, look, this is my mistake. This is what I learned from it. This is what we can do with it. How common is that in teamwork?
You got dead right, James. You've got to have the courage to be vulnerable in life.
Look, still in the warm-up team. The difference between winning and losing is small. It's the consequence that's the big part. Focus on your performance and be the winning difference. So talk us through that one.
Well, stop looking at the scoreboard. Yeah? Stop looking at the scoreboard and concentrate what you're there to do, to perform. No one is in total control over the results in life, because the opposition's trying to get them too. The only thing you're in control over is your own performance. So that's your focus, because that's what makes the winning difference.
And I've got one more quote that I've stolen, and this is a recent quote that you've put out there. And to truly connect through meaningful communication in any relationship, from partner or parent to leader, coach, or team player, we must make time to really know each other and know each other's worlds.
Well, this is, I tell you why I feel this is really important now is that the young people coming through now, their world is so dramatically different than the world that we live in. And it's changing fast. Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, it's changing so much faster than we could ever have imagined in the past. So if you're going to communicate with people, you have to know who they are, but where they come from. What's the world that they live in? Once you can begin to understand that, we can communicate right.
Well, there you go. We've done the warm-up. This is what the session's all about today. Winning culture is founded in a learning culture. Frank has prepared some incredible insights, some shares. So there's going to be stories that's going to be that he's going to share. There's going to be emotions that's going to pour out of this. I've seen all this several times through Frank, and I've just learned from it every single time. Let's see what you've prepared first for everybody.
Well, this you know, is I use it as a classic. I think it's so important. Probably the only sustainable competitive advantage you have is the ability to learn better and faster than the opposition. Now, when we talk about learning, there are some things in life you can be taught. You can be taught the skills, the tools of the trade as a coach, but you can only learn the art through experience. And let me tell you a story about that, learning through experience, by using Jessica Ennis. Now, Jessica Ennis, you'll remember, golden girl of the Olympic Games in London, Olympic gold in the heptathlon. The year before, there's a bit of a stumble in Daegu, where she had a bit of problem with the javelin, and she finished second. Well, Tony Minicello, our coach, always used to try to catch up with me after our big competitions. And so we agreed to meet up in London. And he said, well, Frankie, what did you think? I said, how can I possibly argue about getting four lifetime bests in 2 days out of 7 events? That's really impressive. Great stuff. He says, are you going to say but, Frankie? I said, well, yeah, just a little but. When she was having trouble with the javelin, what did she do? Well, she came to the side of the track to speak to me and Mick Hill, the javelin coach. I said, what did you do? So, well, we obviously gave her advice on how to sort the problem out. I said, that's what you did wrong. So, are you suggesting we gave her the wrong advice? I said, no, I'm suggesting you gave her advice. You see, if your people are going to learn through life experience, you must let them have the experience and then pick up on it afterwards. If you jump over the fence and make decisions for them, they will never learn how to make decisions. I know that's a tough call, and as Vernon Law said, experience is the cruelest of all teachers, because she gives you the test first and the lesson second. Sorry.
I suppose you've got to really trust yourself there. I mean, I'm a parent as well, and there's going to be parents watching this. I mean, I'm applying that into your children, but then you've got you as a business owner, and you're employing people. You got to trust people to go and have an experience and learn from it.
Yeah, and of course you don't get careless with that, James. You know, you don't throw people in the deep end knowing that they can't swim. You know, you've got to you must know that they have some level of preparation for that level of experience. But the point I'm trying to make is that once they've been through the experience, then you have the conversation and make sure that the lesson has been learned. Right? What could you have done differently? What could you have done better? You know, that kind of conversation.
Beautiful message. We've got some more stories here. I've got the next one up on screen here. Let's have a look. Can I get it up?
Well, the reason I wanted to talk this story is that this business of never stopping learning. You know, learning faster, and it doesn't matter how much you know, you still have to revisit it, because once you've learned a lesson, obviously you want to know if it's been retained, and you also want to know if people can retrieve it. Now, when it comes to the real battles out there in life, a lot of people think that you win because of something complex, but you don't. It's always down to basics. You have to be strong in your fundamentals and your basics. As Michael Jordan said, if you forget the fundamentals, the wheels fall off. Now, why have we used Jack Nicklaus? In history, probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest golfer of all time. But every Christmas, when he went home, he'd get a hold of the local pro, and in his words, to realign his swing. Now, come on, that's basic, isn't it? I mean, if the greatest golfer in the world doesn't know how to swing a golf club, we're all in trouble. But the point that he was making was that over these 3 weeks, he tried to get rid of all these little habits, these bad bits of habit that round off your basics and make them less sharp. You've got to go back to them every now and again, refresh them, and then go back into action.
I'm really loving the sport analogies there, because you can get it, can't you? You know, it's like go back and refresh the basics. Now, as people go through life and business, how important is that then? I mean, to go back and go to the basics, and what we're talking here, we're talking about sales and communication. And
Absolutely, James, because we just take them for granted. We take our skills for granted eventually. But the fact is, they can always be made that little bit sharper. I mean, why else does, I mean, in my life, right, working with people like Katarina Witt, Olympic gold medalist in ice skating, world champion, European champion. When I was working with her before any session that any technical session that she ever did, she would go through basic figures, the things that kiddies do when they go to ice skating lessons, just to make sure that the various movements were as precise as they can be.
Yep.
And even that young man, whose name I've just forgotten, who this year did something absolutely amazing. Since 1976, there has been only a triple axel being used in ice skating, right? This young man this year did a quadruple. Now, one of these days, I'll get a hold of the video for you, James. It's unbelievable that this person, to me, the wonderful thing about the human organism is there's no end. There's no limit to what we can do ultimately. Now, I know there'll be people who will argue with that, but no, we impose our own limits in life, right? We've never got anywhere close to what we can achieve emotionally, physically, mentally. Just think of the complex of these resources. Building all of these together, something we can do better, something we can do differently in each of these things, and it grows and it grows. But it all grows because our fundamentals are right.
Well, look, I mean, let's turn that into a question, for everyone that's watching this right now. What are your skills and what are you going to do to hone them? How are you going to get the fundamentals right? If Jack Nicklaus, if it's good enough, that kind of methodology is good enough for the world's best, it's good enough for all of us. Yeah. The next one that you've mentioned was a lesson that we can learn from Johan Cruyff. So what's the lesson here, Frank?
Yeah, well, a couple of lessons that we can learn from Cruyff. The first one was that coming back to what are your fundamentals? When young players came to his the youth part of Barcelona, he insisted that they all, in the first 2 years, they learned to play out of position as often as they played in position, because he was building a mindset that when they got into senior football, and we're talking total football at that point, it meant that you could understand how other persons saw the game from that position. This allowed you to pass a ball that they could use, not just a ball that you wanted to give away. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the keys in communication as much as in football. You don't pass the ball because you want to get rid of it. You pass the ball because you know that person can use it better than you can. And you'll never get that right if you don't understand their world, coming back to the start of our conversation.
It's really nice, isn't it? That first couple of years, that whole learning piece that you go through and understanding others and their dynamics. Learn to play out of your position in them first couple of years, so, as well as in your position. That's what you kind of started with there, yeah.
Yeah. So that we understand in our team. Can you imagine that in a business, when somebody came in for the first time, we didn't routinely put them straight into the slot that they've been employed for, but you gave them an opportunity to understand how everything in the business works first, because then you understand the roles of everybody in the team. And I think that's kind of fundamental. And that allows you then to, Ian McGeechan said to me, Frank, when you pass the ball, you don't give away responsibility, you accept it. You're going to make the right pass for the right person at the right moment for the team. And that communication is exactly the same.
You don't give away it, you accept it. Really powerful lesson. All right, the next lesson that we've got is not from an athlete. This is from
Well,
the
this
International
from a
Space Station.
he's got a guy called Chris Hadfield. I don't know if you remember it. He was the guy that went into space and he sang ground control to Major Sam as he was floating around the space station. And in his book, the Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, he stresses that the focus of all training for an astronaut is that when they go into any situation, it will not be the way it should be. It's your job when you go into any situation. You can imagine this? You're going to go up in space. You're not going to get much assistance once you're up there. You go up in space and you're expecting it to go wrong. And your whole mindset is, I'm here to make things right. I'm here to make things happen. I'm not here to expect them to happen. And I think that's a big lesson again, whether we're in sport or in business or indeed up there on the space station.
I'm here to make things right. There's a lot of value. There's your moral compass there as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you go out into the field in a game and you just go out there and think, well, I'll see what happens, then you're going to be in big trouble. If you're going to make things, if you're going to win the game, if you're going to achieve anything in life, you've got to go in there taking personal responsibility for every moment. It's your job to make the moment work. Don't expect the moment just to work for you.
Great lesson so far. Thank you very much. Keep your comments coming in. Share it far and wide with people as well. The next thing is around preparation that we kind of want to discuss here. And we've got a bit of a diagram that you're going to go through. I think there's two parts to this next slide that you've prepared here. So just talk us through this left to right then.
Well, to a certain extent, this builds on the previous one, how astronauts are prepared. And when we're talking in sport now, you can come out with the best piece of preparation you've ever done, meticulous stuff, you've studied the whole lot, but you have to test it before you use it. Let's take something simple, like you're going to go out and you're going to engage in conversation with a client or a customer, and you've got a plan to do that. You know what you're going to say. You know your product. You know the service that you're going to do. But before you go in there, there's two kind of techniques that you can use to test whether your preparation is as good as you think it is. Okay. The first one's called red teaming. Now, red teaming is where you ask yourself, what could the opposition do to destroy our strategy, right? And in this case, the customer, you might consider the opposition. But on the other hand, it could be somebody else who's looking for the business.
Exactly. It could be your competitors out there.
Absolutely right. What could they do to make your strategy not work?
Well, I like your first phrase. To destroy your strategy. I think it's quite impactful. I mean,
and so the next part of that is something that we learned from the United States SEALs. Which are their equivalent of the SAS, if you like.
Yep.
When they were preparing to go in to take Bin Laden, they were the first people to come out with this expression, to do a pre-mortem. They're imagining that the whole thing is over and it's been a disaster. Why would it be a disaster? Right. And this shifts responsibility to the focus of our testing from looking at the team and the strategy to looking at yourself, asking yourself questions. What if something has gone wrong?
Yep.
What could I have done better in that situation? It makes you examine your own preparation. In that case, they anticipated a helicopter going down. That was part of the pre-mortem. And what would they do if that happened? And it did happen. It did actually happen. But these things are so time dependent, getting it absolutely right in the moment, making a decision in the moment, that the moment when the helicopter did go down, they knew exactly what to do next. So I think each one of us should be going through a process like that in preparation for any situation where we're expected to go in there and deliver our skills perfectly.
Yeah, I think it's pretty uncommon actually that, you know, you can kind of go into a situation optimistic, which we want you to go into. Everyone wants to go into a scenario optimistically anyway. But it's easy not to ask those questions, isn't it? Well, what would the competition be doing right now? If this was to go wrong, what would actually go wrong? And then prepare even deeper, even stronger.
Yeah. Because the only thing that's out there is not certainty. And a lot of people say to me, well, as a coach, it's your job to make sure that to deal with certainty, to make success a certainty. And so there isn't any certainty in any arena. There's only uncertainty, and that's why you do your preparation in this way. What if you may not be able in some instances to know exactly what would go wrong, but do you have a process in place to deal with it? Which was what Hadfield's the astronauts were doing. They would have a process to deal with something going wrong, and we can all have one of these.
And what about the little diagram on the left there? The how, the what, the who, and the why. I mean, what's that in your preparation?
Well, first of all, why are we having this meeting, right? Who's involved? What's going to be done, and how's it going to be done? And
so we go inside out, team.
Yeah,
we go inside out. Why are we having this meeting? Who's going to be involved? What's going to be done, and how we're going to do it? Love it.
Okay, so with that in mind,
we got a video.
We've been talking about stories here today. I'd like to turn the clock back a little bit to a conversation I had when I was asked the question, what's winning?
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this 2 minutes and 40-second video. Here we go.
You know, 100 years ago, I was a Scottish national coach. I used to go around the tracks of Scotland working with coaches. And every now and again, a little girl from this town or that town would turn up and you'd hear a little voice. And I'd be working away and hear the voice going, Mr. Dick! Well, with a name like mine, you don't turn around too fast because you don't know what's going to be said next, you know? So, Mr. Dick! Mr. Dick! Yes? Will you coach me? Well, yeah, but not at the moment because I'm working with these people. Will you coach me later? Yes, fine. When? Look, when I'm finished with them, I'll come and work with you. Where's that? Look, sit down in the stand. When I'm finished with them, I promise I'll come and work with you. Promise? Yeah, see ya. Fine. Now, after I finish working with you, I'll work with her. She's 9 years of age and she wants to go to run 100 meters. And I work with her for a few weeks. She goes to her first race. She lines up with another 7 kids. On your march. Set. Bang. Runs down the track. Hurls herself at the line. 8th out of 8. In 18 seconds. And comes back. Oh, Mr. Dick, I was last. No, you weren't last. Yes, I was. No. You were 18 seconds. What do you mean? Well, you've smashed the 20-second barrier. And I had you down for 19 seconds. You're a whole second faster than that. Do you know what this means? No. This means it's your lifetime best performance. Your own personal world record. Really? Yes. And in some ways, you're a first. What do you mean? You're the first athlete I've ever coached who's run 18 seconds for the 100 meters. Now, listen, in a few weeks' time, she's got another race. What does she think winning is now? If she does 17.9, she'll grab a flag and she'll run around the track. Because that's what winning is. Winning is being better today than you were yesterday. Every day. And if she keeps on working at that, in a few weeks' time, she's fighting with other kids to get to the line. And you might think to yourself, well, surely winning now, Frank, is beating them. Not if it's in 19 seconds, it's not. Or we've killed our definition. The reason you go into tough arenas in life is to be challenged to perform better. You cannot perform better if you're not challenged. Listen, you don't learn to climb mountains in life by going round them or asking somebody for a ladder. You learn to climb mountains by climbing mountains, by seeking out the really toughest challenges, because that makes you perform better. When you keep on going at that, one day you'll be a one and only. But the truth is, she always was, is, and will be.
Beautiful, Frank. And no matter how many times I listen to the story, it's just so powerful. You know, defining that that winning concept in your own mind.
And to me, then that kind of thinking. Let's look at what's just happened there. I wanted to get a message over. I was asked a question, and I wanted to get a particular message across that was going to be crystal clear. What I did was think of a story, and I had the arrogance to think I could tell it in the first place, but I believed I could tell the story, and I built in just a little bit of humor, and hopefully that sticks. And I've often wondered if maybe this whole business, and this is what we're about today, James, this whole business of telling a story, being able to explain yourself around a story, it is a better way to lift the lids of the emotions and get your message through there. If you're only trying to, I've often thought in life that if you're going to be successful as a leader or a coach or whatever, you've actually only got to have two skills. You've got to be able to teach, and you've got to be able to sell. You've got to be able to teach to the head so that people understand the message, but you've got to sell to the heart to get engagement. And I think these two skills are fundamental. You've got them, James. Almost every person I've met in Action Coach has got these skills, but hone them because they're important. And that allows you, if you like, to start thinking, well, are there different ways to win? How do other people think to win? Having picked up on that idea of being better today than you were yesterday. And one thing that came to me was an article that I read in one of the Sunday supplements years ago. It was from Ronaldinho, who had he'd been asked the question, what's your role in the team? Now remember, this guy is the most expensive player on the planet at this point, right? More valuable than anybody else. Everybody looks up to him. He's the maestro. But this was his answer to what his role was. My role in the team is to create plays, to provide the last pass before a goal is scored, to assist. To assist? The greatest player in the world sees himself as an assistant. This is my role, to put my team in a position to score. That is my biggest concern. So on the next slide, when I train, one of the things I concentrate on is creating a mental picture of how best to deliver that ball to a teammate, preferably leaving him alone in front of the rival goalkeeper. So what I do always before a game, always, every night and every day, is to try and think up things, imagine plays, which no one else will have thought of. And to do so, always bearing in mind the particular strengths of each teammate to whom I'm passing the ball. That comes back to my business of know your people, know their world. And on the final slide from Ronaldinho, so the next slide.
Yeah, you got it. I've just put it up there. When I construct those plays, is it not?
Oh, sorry. When I construct those plays, you can edit that bit out, yeah. Yeah, good. When I construct those plays in my mind, I take into account whether one teammate likes to receive the ball at his feet or ahead of him, if he's good with his head and how he prefers to head, whether he's stronger on his right or his left. That's my job. That's what I do. Now, that to me, you know, when I looked at this, I was looking for an example of teamship, you know, how people connect in a team. And I started off thinking what a wonderful example that is. But then I thought to myself, if I was talking about leadership, real quality leadership, would it be any different than that? Making it possible for other people to achieve. And I thought there was a big message in there.
Massive. I think your last 2 points are huge there. I think the first point on the whole personal bests, that is your own benchmark. You cannot ask more than yourself than achieving your very best. And the challenge is to do it every single day in terms of what you've said. Now, I wonder, in sport, people know what the personal bests are. Who recognizes that in business? So you're listening in right now, folks. What's your personal best? What's your best team meeting that you've ever had? What's your personal best for a number of employees you've had, for a number of sales meetings that you get, for your bankings and whatever else that you've got going on in your business, all them KPIs.
James, can I just take that one step further?
Yeah.
Because I think you and I have spoken about this before. Can you imagine that we've each in life got our own trademark or trademarks? What makes us different in the field? What is it about us that makes a huge difference for this team that nobody else can make, right? And I think it's important in life to have a good look at yourself and ask yourself what that is. Now, it may vary from time to time, but when you go into a particular business, you go into a particular task, what is it? What's my brand? What is identified as the true me for this team? And then every day, every time you're involved, you're engaged for your team, score yourself out of 7, if you like. 7 being high, 1 being low. What's my score and my trademark today? Because that comes back to being better today than you were yesterday. But it's that bit more specific, James. It's taking you into the real difference that only you can produce.
You know, your trademark, that question that you said there, what's the difference that I can make? What's my trademark? Just even knowing that and being aware of that, that's definitely going to help increase performance anyway.
Absolutely.
And then grade it out of 7 each day.
Yeah. So when it comes to looking at what your great points are, there's a fantastic little documentary that was done. What was a drama doc about looking for Eric Cantona.
Oh, yeah. Wolf is behind.
In the story, a postman really loves Eric Cantona as a player, and he eventually comes to ask Eric, what was the sweetest moment? Really looking deep into Eric, if you like, saying, "Come on, from your point of view, what's the biggest difference that you made?" And the answer, I thought, was pretty interesting.
Shall we have a look at it?
Yes, let's do that.
Wolf's the take us away.
Sweetest moment ever.
It wasn't a goal.
It's got to be a goal, Eric. Come on. Last minute, FA Cup final against Liverpool. Beckham takes a corner. The goalie runs out. He punches it away. It hits your chest, hits the floor, and it's way up. Bang! You whack it right in the net.
No.
Wimbledon. It's got to be Wimbledon. You're going towards the ball's coming in, you're sussing out the trajectory of it, the angle of it, the spin on it, the way the wind's blowing, the speed of the wind, everything. You stick your right foot out, you stop it in mid-flight, it bounces up about a foot off your leg, you come back, you whack it in, the most perfect volley in the world, in it goes, it's a goal, it's got to be a goal, Eric.
It was a pass.
A pass?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. To Irwin against Spurs, yes! Beautiful.
I know how clever he was. Left, right-footed. Came in a flash. Just flicked it with the outside of my foot. Surprised everyone. Took it in his stride and my heart soared.
A gift.
And like an offering. The great God of football.
What if it had missed?
You have to trust your teammates. Always. If not, we are lost.
Yeah, you got the emotions flowing again. Yeah, what a great video.
And apart from anything else, when you look at that last piece of video there, and Eric chips it from the outside of his foot. I mean, if you look at that, what an extraordinary piece of skill and perception that is, and just how important is it to know your teammates, right? To give them a ball that they can use. It comes back to the point we were making earlier.
Well, look, let's look at your the first quote that you actually put on screen today. The only sustainable competitive advantage that you've got really is teamwork, and that's about the speed of growth. And your Ronaldinho comments that you put up from him there, I mean, he was the assistant to the team.
Yeah, it's incredible concept, but it comes back to the mind of the winner. You know, this comes back to how winners think. And there's not one secret to all of this, because there isn't a secret anyway, but they've all got quite different things that come almost back to the trademark that make them winners in their own way, right? So that it's not, I don't believe it's possible in life to say, here's the formula, if you do this, you're always going to win, right? What we can do is, I'm hoping what we're doing today is to create pictures in people's minds and to have them think differently about themselves and about the world that they're in. And in doing that, we should be able to leverage that extra bit that they've got.
Well, look, we've got about 10 more lessons for you here, team. So let's get another one here up on screen. Talk us through this lesson.
Well, yeah, I mean, we all talk about adapting, and it's important. But I thought adapting to change, but I thought this was really important. Victory Smart, Duhay was an Italian general at the beginning of last century, and he just spotted the aeroplanes were coming into the picture. And I think this is what caused this quote. Victory smiles upon those who anticipate the changes in the character of war, not those who wait to adapt themselves after changes occur. Now, I don't believe it. I don't agree with them totally, because I think if you're going to win the game of change, you've got to be able to be adaptable. You've got to be able to be creative, because you should be able to create change. But this is the big one that most people miss. Can we anticipate it? So when you're preparing a team, for example, for a World Cup or the Olympic Games, and you're 4 years out, your Olympic Games is finished, your World Championships have just finished. Coming back to my quote earlier, last step into this arena, first step into the next. You then start saying to yourself, how are we going to win in the next arena? And some people would say, well, we've got to beat this team and that team. But that's not the answer. Excuse me. But that's not the answer. The answer is to ask yourself, not how can I be better than what excellence is today, but how can I be better than what excellence will be tomorrow? That's a different picture. It's slightly different. The story about the little girl, that still stands for all of us going through life. But when we're going to go into a campaign, you've got to take your brain into what will it be like up there? What will we have to do in order to win? And that's what I think.
Well, anticipation is crucial in business as well as sport. You know, I mean, look at the analogy that you gave about, going for the Osama bin Laden. That was the red team and the pre-mortem.
Yep.
That's about anticipation as well, isn't it? I mean, it's
absolutely right.
Preparation.
And we've got to be able to think differently. Sometimes the world changes about us, and people don't understand what the change means. So, and this next character I'm going to talk to you about is one such person. Back in the 1960s, we had a situation where everybody in the world jumped the straddle technique in high jump, and the straddle technique in high jump, all techniques really were founded on the following. You've got to jump as high as possible off one leg.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to avoid knocking the bar off, and you've got to survive to tell the tale, because sometimes you landed on something that was almost concrete at the other side, right? And so that was it. Every technique had to do with that. And along came a company called Porter Pit, and they had created a landing area that was like landing on a big soft bed. You see them today in every high jump competition and pole vault competition you watch. They land on something nice and soft and raised. Now that was there. The change that the world saw was, we can land comfortably now, so we don't have to worry about that so much. But they didn't change their techniques. Fosbury could not do the straddle. It's really it's as simple as that. He couldn't do the straddle. He could do the scissors that a lot of us did when we were kids trying to do high jump. And he found that he could do something like a scissors, but instead of going across the bar kind of seated, he could hollow his back and land on this very soft landing area. And the reason he had a curve in the run was because the college in South Medford in Oregon could only afford a small D of this synthetic surface.
Really?
Outside that, there was grass. And so you had to run this curve to get over the bar. But, well, I have to say, a story against myself, I saw him in Portland, Oregon, an indoor meet just before the Olympic Games. And I said to my pal, Bill Pink, it's just one of these fashion things. You know, it's a gimmick. It'll die sooner or later. Well, everybody in the world does it now. And he went on, of course, to win an Olympic gold medal with it, which actually was a good selling point for the technique.
He named the technique, yeah?
And named the technique. But it's interesting that when you see the world around you, things are changing all the time. And if you can stand back a bit and ask yourself, can we disrupt our thinking in some way and think differently about how we see the world? Because it's not just that every day you want to try and do something better the next day. Is there something different that you could have done? Could you have done? Could you have tried to sell today? Could we have done this presentation today in a different way? We'll both discuss this afterwards, right? Could we have done it differently?
That's learning for you. Once it's happened, is there something differently that you could have done? I suppose when it gets down to it, all this anticipation, all of this learning, you've got to give yourself some space to think at some stage before an event and after an event. So creating space to think. And it's pretty well documented about getting your thoughts down on paper and journaling and writing things into existence, so they're not all reflections just happening in your mind. What are your thoughts on that, Frank?
Well, yeah, and I think the important thing is to be able to the most important set of skills we need to begin with to understand, to get towards decisions are observation skills. Are we listening, and are we looking? Are we when we listen, what are we hearing? When we're looking, what are we seeing? These have got to be your sharpest skills, because that allows you to have a perception of what is happening in front of you in terms of change, to find a context to it, so that we can make right decisions and right actions afterwards. And I know we've spoken before about the little acronym for that. It's the OODA loop: observe, orientate, or find context if you like, decide, and act. And this all starts with this underlying thread in everything that we do. Is there something more we can learn here? A winning culture is founded on a learning culture. Are we equipped to learn? And you'll only learn if your observation skills are sharp. But when it comes to learning, coming to our next little clip here, next little story here, it all comes back. Do you remember I mentioned a little bit earlier about how important it is to focus on what our performance is rather than on the result? Way back in time, Babe Ruth, legendary baseball player, he was getting a little bit overweight now. He was coming to the end of his career. He'd had a batting slump. His team were not winning as often as they should, and much of that was down to him. And he was at the Wrigley's Field in Chicago for a game, and the crowd were heckling him. You know, he went up to the base and ready for the pitch, and somebody was giving him a hard time, and he said, "Hey, see that piece of green out there? You keep your eye on it, because that's where this ball's going." And the pitcher pitched, and would you believe that's exactly where it went? And he got a home run. Right afterwards, the press conference, they were going at him. What were you thinking, babe, out there? That guy giving you a hard time? Were you thinking to yourself, "I'm going to show that guy"? I mean, were you thinking this is my last chance to show him worth? I said, "No, I wasn't thinking about any of these things." "Well, what were you thinking about, babe?" "I was thinking about hitting the ball." That's it.
How good is that statement at control of emotion?
Yep.
Internal factors, focusing on the stuff he's controlling, yeah?
Always focus on what the game is, not what it means, right? Because once once your brain is into what it means, you're not thinking about the game at all. You're thinking about consequences and so on.
Yeah.
And that comes back to your point. And what's that's all down to managing your emotions effectively. And to tell you, one lad that I worked with over a period of time used to wreck my emotions by being so in control of his own. Dalton Grant.
Yep. We've got him coming up. We've got him coming up.
Yeah, Dalton was an incredible athlete for me. He taught me two things. The first one was about this managing of emotions. He'd go out there, and he's the kind of guy who he will have done a particular height in the year, let's say 2 meters 31. And the bar would come up to 2 meters 31 at a major competition, European indoors in particular, and he'd pass on it and go to 2 meters 33, right? So he's going. It might at least have done my nerves a bit of good.
All right.
To at least get that one done. Let's do 231 again. But no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm going to try 233. Well, he went on that night, scaring me to death, but because he liked to have that little edge in himself, that little bit of fear. And he jumped 237, got a British record, got the gold medal, and walked away. And every time he was out there, he deliberately put himself under a bit of pressure because he wanted to feel that excitement and that bit of adrenaline going. The other thing that Dalton taught me was a really big lesson I think we could all learn from. We just finished the Olympic Games in 1988. We're on the plane flying home, and something you may not know is that after every major championships, the chief coaches would get together and over a beer and work out what they think the performance that they thought would be gold for next time round. This business of anticipating excellence in the future. So we sat down and did that. I'm sitting in a plane, knowing that Dalton had jumped 2 meters 31, and we were sat there in the plane. He says, "What are you doing, Frankie?" And I said, "These are the what we expect to get gold next time round." He says, "What's it for the high jump?" And I said, "Whoa, a bit scary, Dalton, 2 meters 40. He says, "That's great." I said, "Why is that great?" He says, "Well, it's only 2 centimeters a year and an extra one for the Olympics." And I thought, great, that's it.
Break it down.
That would break it down. Break it down into achievable, stretch by all means, but achievable objectives, small ones every day, because that comes back to our little girl, right? It doesn't have to be a big result or whatever. It can just be part of the result. It can be what you've done in training. It can be a conversation you had. It can be anything like that. Because if you keep on looking for the little contests and components in your life and try to improve on each one of these, and I know we've spoken about this before, it can be almost nothing. Each one of these can be almost nothing. But when you add them all together, you've got a significant something.
When he responded back to you, his opening phrase tells you a lot about his mindset there. That's great.
Yep.
Means we've only got to do 2 centimeters for the next 2 years. You know, so, you know, just that's optimism. That's like belief all there at the same time. We've got a number of other lessons to go through. So these are going to come thick and fast now, folks. So let's keep them coming. So we've got Ali versus Frazier, second match, yeah?
Well, the next two stories are very closely related, as you'll see. This is the second fight between Frazier and Ali. And these boys are not youngsters anymore, right? They're getting towards the end of their career. But I have to say they were as fit as they could possibly have been in that fight. Well, it was in the days of 15 rounds, right? And it got to the end of the 14th round. They'd been knocking the snot out of each other for the whole competition. And they were both wobbling, and they went back to the corner. Ali sat down, And Angela Dundee, second, is keep cooling him down with a towel and so on. But and Ali says, I've had it. Throw in the towel. If I get up there now, he'll kill me. I can't go on. And I have to say, Angelo Dundee must be a very, very brave chap, because he slapped Ali. If I'd done that, I would have jumped out of the ring immediately afterwards.
Right.
And he told him, what are we here for? We're here to fight and so on. Stand on your feet. We're going to go for this. And so he did. He stood up. The stool went back. Ali stood up. Angelo Dundee got out of the ring. The bell went. And Frazier's corner threw the towel in. There, guys. Just a moment to stay in the game, and that made the difference. Don't walk away. Stay in the game, because you never know what will happen. And let's come back to a few weeks ago when we were watching England versus New Zealand rugby at Twickenham. No team had ever come back to recovered from a 14-point deficit on New Zealand before, right? And definitely nobody had come back from being 19 points behind them with 10 minutes to go. But a team hung in. They stayed in the game. And all that they'd been working for weeks, the training programs, all geared to this, to being consistent and running directly and so on. And there'd been mistakes made in the game, of course there had. There'd been this incredible opening try for New Zealand, which obviously would knock the wind out of anybody's sails. But the score ended up 25-25 at the end. Just because you stay in the game, believing in yourself and believing that your performance will make a difference. That's it. And so these two stories are really just about that. Yep. Staying in the game and continuously going for the win. And part of that is believing in yourself. So my own young boy, Daley Thompson, and Daley, we're doing a training camp out in California. It had been the end of a very warm day, and I was sitting on just outside on the patio, which leaned onto the beach at Capistrano Beach in California, outside the little house he'd rented, and I was watching the pelicans flying low over the water towards San Diego. I was watching the golden sun melting into the Pacific, and I could hear the dolphins splashing in the shallows. And I was wondering how on earth I was going to explain to Linda that I was actually working when I was in California. When out of nowhere, I heard Daley said, "Frankie, who's the greatest athlete you ever saw?" I said, "I mean, ever?" He said, "Yeah, ever. Who's the greatest athlete you ever saw?" I mean in television and stuff. Yeah. Well, I said, "Well, it could be." He said, "Forget it, buddy. You're looking at him." And I think you might think to yourself, "Well, that's very conceited and so on." You need in Scotland, we've got an expression: you've got to have a good conceit of yourself. That means a positive piece of self-belief. That's all. And there isn't anybody who's watching this, or anybody that we work with, who doesn't from time to time have a little bit of self-doubt. But you've also got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and know that the person you're looking at is a winner. We will win. We can see it through. We can learn fast. We can grow fast. We can have our devices, and we go all the way through. And can it go wrong in times? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember Jock Stein, manager of Celtic, and went on to be manager of Scotland. And I'd had a very bad Commonwealth Games. I think there was only one medal for my team in Scotland, and I was being slaughtered by the press. And Jock phoned me up. Now I'm a Rangers supporter, so I was surprised that a Celtic manager would be taking a Rangers supporter out for lunch. But he took me out for lunch, and he said, we were walking down the street, and he said, "Your head's still down, son." I said, "Well, yeah, Jock, I'm really hurting by all of this stuff." He said, "Look, how many people do you think there are between us and the traffic lights there?" I said, "Oh, about 100. He said, "Well, at least 99 of them think they know more about football than me." but they're not accountable for their opinions. I'm accountable for mine, and you're accountable for yours. And that's all you have to remember in life. And I thought it was a great message from a great man. Tragically, he died. But one final little story around what we've been talking about here is it's kind of related to the Ronaldinho story, but it's also related to the whole picture of knowing our people and making right decisions for them, not just for them, but for the team. Back in 1956, Hungary were the greatest football team in Europe, probably in the world at that point. And there was an uprising in 1956, and the Soviet soldiers suppressed the uprising in Hungary. And most of the team fled because the danger was huge. And the captain of the team at that point was Ferenc Puskás. And Puskás was a great goal scorer. And he ended up being bought by Real Madrid at the same time as Di Stefano was in there. Now, Di Stefano at that point was the highest goal scorer in the Spanish football, Puskás internationally. And there's big darts. I mean, it's like being the top matador, you know, you're up there at the very top if you're the highest goal scorer. And the statistics are produced every week. Well, once Puskás arrived there, he was made captain, and as the season went on, one week Puskás had the most goals. The next week it was Di Stefano. Next week Di Stefano. This was going on, and what had actually happened in the changing room was that some players would deliberately pass the ball to Di Stefano and others deliberately to Puskás. So this team was not operating as a functional team. It got to the last game of the season. And as it happened, both players have got exactly the same number of goals. It came to a point where Puskás had the ball and he was attacking the defense. And it was one of these sagging defenses, which was kind of an angle, trying to suck him into the corner. And he turned in a sixpence, went through the line, through the defense line at 90 degrees, got to the end of the 18-yard line, the goalkeeper's saying his prayers, and out of the corner of his eye, he could see Di Stefano at the other side. And he chipped the ball to Di Stefano, and Di Stefano scored the goal and ended up as the top goal scorer in the league that year. That moment of decision-making from that leader was absolutely magic in making the team become so together, it was unstoppable for the next several years. Real Madrid became the best club in the world at that point. And out of this kind of selfless bit, why not be the greatest goal scorer? Why not be, I'm the captain, it'll strengthen my position even more. No, you don't do that. You think for the team and you pass the right ball at the right time for the team.
Amazing stories. You know, look, let's just start solidifying what we've got here. Start putting in the comments box what have been your biggest takeaways from this today with Frank. So start getting that in the question box. We do have one more slide to walk you through here today before the hour is up. So just talk us through this one, Frank.
Well, first of all, Albert Camus, an existentialist philosopher, he used the line, life is a sum of all our choices, right? And that makes me think that life is like a long road with crossroads in it. And at each crossroads you come to, you make one of three decisions. You can quit, you can go for it, or you can wait and see what happens, right? And as you go through your crossroads, and you can come to a situation like this. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And I think that is something that we've all had going through the stories that in today's session. Just think about it. When you come to these crossroads, you can take the easy way that everybody else does, or you can have a bit of serious personal reflection, call the shot, and take the one less traveled by. I know I have. I know that you have, James. And I wish that on everybody else who's looking in. Thanks very much for today.
What a beautiful, eloquent summary that was as well. Very emotional, very heartfelt session. What have been your biggest lessons? What story resonated with you most? And what decision are you going to make on the back of this session with the great, the mighty, the best Frank Dick? Thank you so much on behalf of everybody, Frank. We've enjoyed every minute. Have a great weekend, team. See you again next time.
Thanks, James.
We'll be right back.